My name's Amanda. This story is called Cracklin' Jack Pepper and His Decade of Chocolate. As promised, this is the story of Cracklin' Jack Pepper and his decade of chocolate. A decade may seem like a long stretch of time from where you all are comfortably seated in your contextually short little lives, but for old Cracklin' Jack, this period went by in 2 shakes of a tail feather. Mean boss Mr. Milk McSpill had just finished loudly firing Leonard Lamstone from the 54th floor of the narrow-staired office building, where they both maintained venerated positions as trash room attendants. The trash room is where the employees all spit out their gum. The unceremonious firing was precipitated by a particularly uproarious afternoon of chewing and chawing. Ha ha ha. So much gum had piled up inside the room that employees could no longer reach the door to enter or exit, and were forced to scale the mountain of sticky, clotted matter and clamber savagely to the top where a non-egress window could just be reached. Jack Pepper could hardly fathom a guess at what sort of event would create such a desire to chew gum. He imagined women in strappy sandals blowing huge bubbles and popping them in front of their noses. Mean boss Mr. Milk McSpill came in and saw the mess and immediately fired Leonard Lamstone. Jack Pepper stood courtside with a broom, looking diligent, and was apparently spared the wrath of the gum decider. Mean Mr. McSpill frowned in a dilapidated confusion before raising his finger to an invisible light bulb overhead. "You should be in chocolate," he said. This shoved his frown down his throat, and a peeling grin emerged in its place. This is how Cracklin' Jack first got into chocolate. The chocolate floor was entirely different than the low-level gum-filled trash emporium he'd been made to sweep up the past decade of his career. A wonderful aroma drifted wildly and possibly around him, as if from an invisible wind, as he glided smoothly across the white marble floor. For his first day on the job, he had packed his usual thermos of sesame noodles and 3 apples, and a red cap pulled firmly over his dark hair, but upon arrival at the gates of cacao, his provisions turned noiselessly to butter and melted cleanly through his fingertips. He gasped and wiped his palms, but found that they were clean and dry with no additional effort. Chocolate magic, he thought. And so the great love affair of his life was born. Once he had had a taste of chocolate, he could never return to chewing gum. He worked his days diligently and without friction, dancing weightlessly from moment to moment with a ringing passion, singing his heart to sleep each night. During lunch breaks, he listened on firm repeat to Nina Simone's "I Want a Little Sugar in My Bowl." And he did want a little sugar. He began remaining on the chocolate floor after hours, at first just for a lingering several minutes, some light loitering really, but soon his timid flirtation blossomed uncontrollably into a full-fledged obsession. He started keeping striped pajamas and a bottle of toothpaste under chocolate fountain number 45, and soon a vinyl mat for sleeping and a small collection of light cotton blankets. No sooner had he begun to accumulate domestic items, however, than did he start tossing them one by one into the chocolate river, joyously, never to be retrieved again. "I don't need a vinyl mat and striped pajamas and a bottle of toothpaste," he thought. "All I need is chocolate. Chocolate is my bed, and chocolate is my slippers. Chocolate is my dreams. Chocolate is my passport. Chocolate is my mother, and chocolate is my girlfriend. Chocolate is all I have needed and all I will ever need." He thought this with a smile and closed his eyes on his bed of chocolate with chocolate pillows and a chocolate blanket. 9 years passed dreamily in a bliss so total that it contained no cracks for air to seep in through, nearly killing him. But one fateful morning, as old Jack was brushing his chocolate teeth with his chocolate toothpaste on his chocolate toothbrush, something terrifically bad happened. One tooth jiggled slightly as the brush passed over it, and when Jack nudged it suspiciously, it came cleanly right out of his mouth. Astonished and fearful, he held 2 trembling hands to his face and felt gingerly up and down along his jawline. To his horror, he realized that every tooth was loosened. It seemed that a near decade of total consumption had rendered his mouth a pile of loose dominoes held together lightly by stringy, gummy stubs left over from the heyday of his once great mouth. His jaw hung open, and his horrible teeth lay bizarrely about his tongue like little porcelain pieces of chopped popsicle. Stooping to pick up his large metal pail, he wheeled crazily around and ran screaming through the chocolate corridor and past the chocolate information center. Scaling swiftly the chocolate bridge, it crisscrossed over the chocolate river. Cracklin' Jack bent and dipped his bucket into the stream, retrieving an oozing and hot gallon of fresh chocolate. Without stopping to pour the contents into any kind of glass or drinkable ware, he opened his horrible mouth wide and upturned the bucket over his head, so that chocolate cascaded down onto his face and neck, into his ears, and all down his body. The parts that hit his mouth were an unfortunate confirmation of his tragedy. Try as he might, he could no longer chew and swallow the chocolate that he loved so dearly. Sorry. This is where our hero's decade of chocolate came to a tragic but inevitable end. Understanding immediately the cocoaless confines of his new life, Cracklin' Jack Pepper worked swiftly and without hesitation. He laid himself down along the shore of the chocolate river and waited with eyes closed as waves of chocolate slowly overtook his damaged figure. By morning, there was no trace of his body. Needless to say, this is a lesson for you all, friends of Christopher Adams. If you plan to spend your entire life eating chocolate, you'd better plan to spend at least one day of each of your years in the chair of a dentist's office, or be prepared to die. Thank you.